Welcome, everyone, to the Workforce Navigator podcast. I'm Steve McDonald, your host, and today we have a fantastic guest and conversation. We have on Patty Gough. Now, Patty is an esteemed guest here. Patty, you have over 30 years of experience in the Marine Corps. You actually retired as a colonel. You've overseen 96,000 troops in the field. You've been in war zones, right? You, probably more than anyone else, have understood what is the requirement of leadership and why leadership is so important. And not only from a military perspective, but you've worked with a number of different firms, businesses, and consulting. In fact, you're the CEO and founder of Poseidon Consulting. So you've made this incredible transition between the world of military and leadership and business leadership and why it's so important. But before we get into that and the actual topic, which is the missing link to creating high performance teams, leadership at all levels. Before we do that, I'd love to give you an opportunity to explain a little bit more about your background, more than I did just in the few bullet points there.
Thank you, Steve. I really appreciate this opportunity to take part in your podcast. Just a wee bit about myself. I was born in Ireland, came to the United States when I was about 4 years old. Ergo, the call sign that was anointed to me in the Marine Corps as Patty. The only people that refer to me as Patrick are my wife and my mother when I'm in trouble. I really don't like the use of the term Patrick or the name Patrick. But I grew up in Southern California, Los Angeles, and Orange County. I graduated from California State University of Fullerton. Joined the Marine Corps upon graduation and commissioning in January of 1980. And immediately went to the basic school in Quantico, Virginia for 6 months, where they teach you leadership, starting at the most basic level. And at the end of that 6 months, you come away, as all Marine officers do, capable of leading a platoon of Marines in combat. From there, I went to naval flight training in Pensacola, Florida for a year, exactly a year, and got my wings, finished first in my class, and was able to select the type model series of aircraft that I wanted to fly, and that was attack helicopters. And I got my second location, and that was Southern California, so at Camp Pendleton in northern San Diego County. From there, I spent almost 7 years in my first squadron and had department head billets in every department, up to everything short of being the executive officer or the commanding officer in the squadron. Logistics, maintenance, operations, safety, tactics, training, everything rolled into one. And when I was there, I deployed 3 times overseas. The third time was combat in the Persian Gulf during Operation Earnest Will in the late 80s. From there, I got my dream job and went to Marine Aviation Weapons and Tactics Squadron 1, which is the Marine Corps equivalent of Top Gun. I had previously attended the school as a student, and I got an opportunity that, like I said, the dream job to go back and be an instructor. I was there for 4 years and took part in a lot of classified work involving aviation, but while I was there, I deployed again my second combat tour to the Persian Gulf for Operations Desert Shield and Desert Storm. And upon returning from there, I finished out my 4-year tour at Mott's One and Yuma, and then came back to Camp Pendleton, where I was the operations officer for squadron and deployed overseas as a maintenance officer for a composite squadron, including Harrier jets and all type model series of helicopters aboard ship. And I was gone for about 8 months. From there, came back, went to school. And you'll notice a trend here that at every rank within the Marine Corps, I attended formal education schools for at least a period of 6 months to a year. And those schools were intended to develop me as a leader, because a large part of each of those curricula were leadership development, but also then how to perform professionally at the next level in anticipation of being promoted to the next levels. From there, eventually I assumed command of Marine Light Attack Helicopter Squadron 169, where I had about 370 Marines and 27 aircraft. From there, again, I went back to school. And returning from school after a year, I was the executive officer for the aircraft group, and then eventually took over as the commanding officer of Marine Aircraft Group 39, which is the largest Marine aircraft group in the Marine Corps, with 200 aircraft and over 5,000 Marines. From that, I decided that it was time for me to get out of the Marine Corps. I turned down 3 sets of orders to the Pentagon, which is the kiss of death for Marines or anybody in any service as far as promotion. I did that knowingly, and I needed to spend more time with my family. So I retired from the Marine Corps and was recruited by Orange County Transportation Authority to become the Executive Director of Human Resources and Organizational Development. And underneath me, I had 6 departments within the organization. I spent time as the interim deputy CEO and actually the interim and acting CEO for a while. And from there, I was recruited away from OCTA to take over as the chief operating officer for an aerospace company in North San Diego County. And following that 4.5-year stint as COO, I moved on to become the CEO of that company. And then medical reasons caused me to jump into retirement. But now that everything's fine, I still need something to do. And that's why I founded my own company, where I am an international business broker working with companies both domestically in the United States and overseas, specifically focused on Latin America to help them conduct business. But I also, on the side, have a passion for leadership, and I consult with companies who would like to get that leadership education at all levels within their company. That's all I've got, Steve.
That's quite the background. So one of the things that you had said in a previous conversation that we have is that it's amazing because in the business world, we don't really train our people. We don't have leadership training, right? You go through the ranks, you get promoted and you move up and you move up, but very rarely do we actually equip our people to understand what it takes to be a good leader and what it takes to be a good leader at every different level. And you just mentioned in there that at every different stage of your military career, you went through extensive training, specifically leadership training. And now you've been working in the business world for a long time. Why is leadership training at all levels something that we should be doing in business, but why aren't we?
That's a great question. And it is one of the glaring issues and shortfalls that I saw coming from 30 years in the Marine Corps to the business world. Very rarely, in my personal experience, dealing with all different types of companies, from small business owners all the way up through major defense contractors, if ever have I seen a parallel track of personal and professional development similar to the one that's established within the military. And it's not just the Marine Corps, it's the Army, Navy, Air Force, Space Force, Coast Guard. All the military service have the same type of curricula to develop leaders at all ranks. So from the first private that comes into boot camp in San Diego or Parris Island for the Marine Corps, or officer candidate school for the officers, all the way up through, we have the corporal's course, which is a year-long course for brand new staff non-commissioned officers for corporals and sergeants. And there's a sergeant's course. Then there's the staff NCO academy. And then there's the senior leaders course for senior enlisted Marines. So for officers, it started at officer candidate school, but then it went to the basic school, expeditionary warfare training school, command and staff college, war college, and at the general officer level, they even go to capstone. So every level within the Marine Corps is constantly being exposed to and going through well-established lessons learned, interaction, immersive leadership training. At the same time, in parallel, that they're progressing up through their military occupational specialty, getting educated formally on everything that they're supposed to be doing on their professional side of things. So it's a parallel track, leadership development and technical progression all the way through. And what I saw with transitioning to the civilian world is that tenure vice leadership development seem to matter. An individual progresses up through higher levels of responsibility within an organization, but doesn't necessarily have any leadership development whatsoever. And the result is, as that individual who has been in the company and the organization for 20, 25, 30 years progresses all the way up through, they're very technically proficient. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been able to meet the performance standards, but they're very, very poor leaders. And now that we get into this whole discussion of leadership versus management, my personal opinion is that you manage programs, or people manage programs, and they lead people. And therein lies a rub that we can talk about forever in a different discussion. But what I've found is that companies that haven't invested in the leadership development of their people, starting at the very lowest level, all the way up through and including the CEO, will tend to have a much harder time with recruitment, but even more so retention of key high-performing individuals, because those people don't leave companies, they leave poor leaders. And a very poor leader can disenfranchise subordinates. He can cause the bottom line to suffer within an organization because highly qualified, highly productive people leave leave the company who have progressed up to a certain level and are major contributors to the company. Those people leave. Now you have to go and add the costs of recruiting people who are qualified to fill the position. And once you're able to recruit people, there's probably a difference, especially if that individual has been in the company for 10, 15 years, there's probably a difference in the entry pay that you're going to have to pay at this point to recruit somebody that has the requisite skill sets to come in at that lower level. And then you're going to have to spend a ton of time, money, and effort in order to bring those people up to a similar level of proficiency and productivity as the person that just left because that senior person in the organization was just a terrible leader and caused hate and discontentment and disenfranchised those people. So from a bottom line perspective, it just makes all the sense in the world that companies can invest a very, very small amount of money in their people to show that they're interested in developing their people, one, and two, to get them the requisite skill sets required for them to become effective leaders as they progress up. Not everybody's going to want to be a boss. Not everybody who joins a company wants to be the CEO. Not every Marine comes into the Marine Corps wanting to be a squadron commander, a battalion commander, or the commandant of the Marine Corps. There are only a few people that really have that in mind. And some of them, half of those people can't be trusted anyway because they're careerists. And that's another subject that we can get into. But for those who are interested in progressing up through seniority within an organization, it's incumbent upon the highest level within that organization. And when I talk highest level, I'm talking CEO or president, has to have the commitment and the vision to see that investing a small amount of money in those people, his or her employees, can actually yield huge ROI benefit to the organization. Does that make sense, Steve?
That makes perfect sense. And in fact, you addressed one of the big issues there, which is budgets. Lots of times, no company has unlimited budgets. We're all operating within a finite world of funds that we have to operate and grow our business. And so the priorities of investing in leadership development skills seems to always just fall by the wayside, right? But the way that you put it there, and not only have you been in the military, CEO of these businesses, you've overseen and you've actually run HR as well. You termed it right there as a very small investment with very large dividends. Tell me a little bit about that, because that kind of debunks the whole we can't afford to do things like leadership development. And then we start thinking about leadership offsites and different things that we need to get people involved in. And it just starts in our mind to expand in terms of like how costly that would be. Why should we do that?
Yeah, again, I'll speak from personal experience here. The aerospace company that I was COO and CEO of, we had about $750 million worth of international and domestic contracts, but we were considered a small to mid-sized company. Not an awful lot of money to be spending $20, $30, $40,000 per employee to go to Cabo San Lucas with everybody at an offsite so that we can sit around, hold hands, sing kumbaya, and talk about leadership, and hire in high dollar consultants that are going to talk about ethereal concepts that really leave everybody scratching their head at the end of the day, and they didn't connect with the people. If a company wants to go and pay a lot of money to some individuals that have published books or curricula on how to become great leaders, and you have the money to do that, you have the time to do that, God bless you. My point is that you don't have to spend a lot of money to be able to effectively communicate to the employees, one, that you care about their personal and professional development, and two, that you're willing to commit as the leaders within that organization, participating in that training as well. I have not met a CEO, myself included, that couldn't learn every day something new. And if a CEO or a president of an organization or a company believes that they are the end all, then there's a problem. First of all, the leadership within the organization has to commit to themselves getting better, and then they have to commit to making the organization a place where people can feel comfortable that their bosses have their back and they want to make them better. And you don't have to spend a ton of money to do it. There are people that I interact with and actually work with on a daily basis that provide leadership training that's very, very expensive, and there's others that provide better training for far less money. Not fancy slides, not going to Cabo San Lucas or Kauai to contemplate things, but you get the job done. The other thing that I'll talk about here when we're talking about ROI is that You wouldn't put up, as a CEO, you wouldn't put up with people who were underperforming. There are tons of HR mechanisms by which people can be warned for underperformance, written up for underperformance, engage in interactive processes to help people get better, put people on performance improvement plans, suspend them, fine them, whatever the case may be. There's a ton of stuff out there. And again, I'm not an HR professional, but I hire HR professionals that help me navigate those waters. But people who underperform, there are leaders who also underperform. And those leaders who underperform don't get the most out of the people that work for them or with them. And those missteps can actually have a very big negative impact on the bottom line. So the ROI for putting a little bit of time and effort and training and development on the professional side as well as the personal side. And when I say personal side, I'm really talking about leadership development, can pay big dividends. You're not going to see as many mistakes. You're going to feel people feel like they're much more committed, much more loyal to the organization because the organization has taken a personal interest in making them better. You're going to see efficiency increases. You're going to see a lot less employees phoning it in, if you will. They're not just punching the clock, sitting there at their desk for 8 hours a day and then going home. They're people that are really going to be committed to a shared sense of common purpose within an organization if the organization just invests a little time, effort, and money in them from a leadership perspective and a personal and professional development perspective.
Can you tell me like a story? Because everything that you're saying there makes absolute perfect sense. And we're all thinking, absolutely, this is something we have to invest in our businesses. Is there any kind of story that you can tell me about a team that came together, that coalesced, that you actually physically could see this transpiring, right? This performance level, this increase, the dividends, the benefits, however you want to talk about it. We remember things so much more in the form of a story. It's like, oh, it makes so much sense, right? Is there that kind of a story that you have that you could tell us here today?
I'll start it off by saying that I've read a ton of books. I've sat through tons and tons of lectures in the formal academic setting. That's been great. As I've told my son from time to time, sometimes actually I sprint through the minefield of life, and occasionally I'll step on a mine and blow up. And as my daughter has done, she sits back and she takes notes about where not to step. So she goes at a slower pace, but it's a steady pace, and she progresses without making the missteps that myself and my son have made as we bluster through things. But I have learned more about leadership from the distasteful exposure to bad leaders, the amazing opportunities that I've had serving under incredible leaders. In a case in point, everybody's very familiar with George Patton and his command at the Battle of the Bulge and in North Africa. And the numbers of soldiers that he commanded in Europe is eye-watering, and the successes that he enjoyed on the battlefield, just phenomenal. I happened to work with an individual who at the time was a 3-star general, eventually went on to become a 4-star general and became the commandant of the Marine Corps. I still consider him a very close mentor, a personal friend. And as the operations officer for 1st Marine Expeditionary Force in Kuwait and Iraq in 2002 and 2003, I interacted with this 3-star on a daily basis, almost hourly, and especially at night, because I was the guy that he picked to stay up all night and run the war within the Marine sector at night. And nothing good ever happens at night. I don't know if you noticed that, but nothing good ever happens at night. So I had the opportunity to reflect when the president declared victory. I had the opportunity to smoke a cigar and drink a non-alcoholic beverage with him outside of Al Hilal in Iraq one day as we were just winding down. And I asked him a simple question: General, why did you sleep way more than I did during the last several months that we were involved in combat operations? And he goes, first of all, Patty, you look like crap right now. And it's because I'd go days without sleep just because of the job requirements. But he said at night at 2 in the morning, when you would come in and wake me up and ask for or tell me what was going on and either ask for my guidance or told me what it is that you did from an initiative perspective, you expected me to be 100% there for you, cognitively, physically, emotionally. You didn't need to come in and see somebody staring back at you, Patty, that looked just like you, tired, worn out, and burnt out. I needed to give you my best effort. I couldn't give you my best effort if I wasn't taking care of my physical self, my physical being. And so this is a man who was in charge of 96,000 United States Marines and British coalition forces, traveling over 800 miles from Kuwait up through Baghdad and to the northern part of the country of Iraq. And we took on 14 Iraqi divisions, straight nose on. So that just kind of woke me up. It's like, oh my God, how can I, in fact, my first command I had after I left the 1st Marine Expeditionary Force was command of the largest air group in the Marine Corps. And I adopted that same thing. If I came into work at 5 in the morning, somebody's going to try to be in work before me. And if I stayed there till 10 o'clock at night, somebody's going to try to stay there till 11 o'clock at night. Just so in case I asked a question, there was somebody there that could give me subject matter expertise opinions. At the same time, I could tell you that the divorce rate, alcoholism, or drug abuse would have gone through the roof. People would have been burnt out. People would have been getting out, not staying in, not re-upping. So I made it a point that I wouldn't come into work any earlier than 7:30 in the morning. And I would leave the office at 5 in the afternoon, unless I was flying at night or something of that nature. But I made it a point to establish that I saw value in a work-life balance, that I saw value in quality of life, that I saw value in physical training, taking care of yourself, taking the time to read professional books or just reading Tom Clancy just to enjoy it. And now what they didn't see is that I went home at 5, but I'd probably still work at home on my computer till midnight, but they didn't see that. So General Conway was that 3-star general and former commandant of the Marine Corps. Just a simple conversation like that imparted to me so much wisdom about how to be an effective leader that I couldn't ignore it. And I still hold to that mantra now.
You've given us so much to digest and to think about. It just makes us feel like that there's so much we've been doing right, obviously, because everybody we've been progressing in our careers, but there's so much we can do. And we take tidbits away. And I think just like that story that you had with that 3-star general, I'm hoping that this podcast is something that people can really significantly take away what you're talking about. And to that point, I want to ask you, what is the single takeaway that you want the audience to have from this? If there's one thing that you want us to take away, what would that be?
I can't answer that singularly. If I can I offer 2 takeaways?
Absolutely.
First, I talk about passion for mission accomplishment or getting the job done based on the strategic vision that the leadership within an organization imparts to those who are actually doing the work. So passion for mission accomplishment. I mean, you can't fail, especially in the military, you can't fail, or huge geopolitical and fiscal complications. But from a company perspective, you don't want to fail. You want to continue to make money. You want to continue to take care of your people. You want to grow your products. You want to innovate. You want to grow as an organization, as a company. And that really, in business, that's the bottom line. Increase revenue, decrease waste, increase production, innovate. But then there's the other side of the coin for informed leaders of compassion for the people that are actually doing the work. You can have slave labor like they do in China, where everybody goes in there, they're beaten if they don't perform, and their families are eradicated, just all the badness that you hear. And then there's a knee jerk to over compassion where you don't really hold people standards of high performance. You just let people get away with it. Bottom line there is that your ROI goes in the toilet. So how do you come to grips with balancing the passion for the mission accomplishment and the compassion for the people that are actually doing the work? And a very good friend of mine who also retired as a 3-star, in fact, he was the one who I relinquished command of the aircraft group. He came up with a really good way to capture it, and it's mission first, people always. And if you understand that you have to get the job done, or why even try, but in the process of getting that job done, you have to take care of the people. And by taking care of the people, it's giving them, it could be the training, the skill sets, whatever the case may be. It could be the time off. It could be taking care of their families, really being interested in them, giving them the personal, professional development. So there has to be that balance between passion and compassion. The second thing, I say that leadership is a participation sport. All too often, we see senior leaders within an organization that are just spectators. They're along for the ride. They think that their job in life is to do the big decisions and let everybody else figure it out. Well, no. And that goes back to what we talked about earlier. I'm not going to get on a commercial airliner or a ship that doesn't have a captain of that vessel that's driving it in a direction that's predetermined and established. You have to be active leaders. And that means that you have to know every aspect. You don't have to necessarily be the duty expert on everything, but you have to know every aspect about every element of the organization that you're in charge of. And if you don't, then that's a problem. And the only way to do that, in my opinion, is for each individual at every level to seek self-improvement. Every day I learn more and more and more. And sometimes I go, oh my goodness, Patty, what were you thinking? Things I thought were perfect years ago that I did, on retrospection now, I look and I go, what was I thinking about back then? So hopefully I can impart to other people some of the mistakes I made, some of the shortcomings that I've had, the lessons learned, and build that together with the formal academic thing. So commit to learning and growing yourself and commit to creating a culture within the organization that allows people to learn and grow and help others to attain that personal and professional development, that growth. Invest the time and effort in people, and it'll pay huge dividends in the long run.
Well, you certainly have done that for us today, where we all can learn every day, no matter how experienced we are, how many gray hairs we have, right? That you've proven it today. There's a ton that we can be learning, and there's going to be people that have questions. Would it be appropriate that I gave out a link to your LinkedIn profile that people could reach out and ask questions if they had it?
Absolutely.
Fantastic. Well, Patty, thank you so much for coming on. I feel like we should be doing a series on this and not limiting it to one podcast. But everything you said here today is something that we just really need to take to heart. Appreciate your time today, sir.
No, thank you, Steve. Thanks for the opportunity. And I'm available anytime, anywhere for anybody that would like to discuss leadership. It's just a passion of mine.